Hello there, I'm Orkhan Amashov. Welcome to Context. Against the backdrop of the US foreign policy shift away from the transatlantic alliance, with Europe itself feeling on the verge of being abandoned by Washington, the fate of Ukraine now seems even more connected with that of the continent. Well, quite a number of dramatic and immensely consequential events have taken place over the past few weeks, sending shockwaves throughout the world, with some inquiring as to whether NATO, as we know it, could survive the growing chasm between the United States and its European allies. Although Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has recently described the Oval Office meeting with President Trump as regrettable, expressing his desire to work for peace under Trump's leadership, Ukraine's ambassador to the UK, Valery Zaluzhny, told the conference at the Chatham House think tank that recent steps by Washington towards Moscow were a huge challenge, accusing the United States of destroying the world order by making concessions to Russia. Many would say that at this juncture, this comment was not particularly helpful, in particular at a time when Ukraine is desperately trying to repair its strained ties with Washington. The challenge for the European Union is one of historic nature, extending beyond, yet being closely interlinked with Ukraine, involving the question of defense self-sufficiency, with an ambitious rearmament plan being the central element of current discussions. Since the start of the war in Ukraine back in February 2022, the European Union and its member states have provided nearly 135 billion euros in support for Ukraine, including 48.7 billion euros to support the Ukrainian armed forces. In addition to this, the European Union has also adopted unprecedented sanctions against Russia, which have, however, failed to produce the intended crippling effect. After Washington's suspension of military aid to Ukraine and pause on critical intelligence sharing arrangement, the impression given is that the United States, in the person of President Donald Trump, is not just exploring every possible avenue to humiliate Ukraine and its president, but also force it by all possible means to a compromise deal which many of Kyiv's European allies believe would be unfair and not durable. It has also been recently reported that Trump's administration is planning to revoke temporary legal status of 240,000 Ukrainians who fled the war, potentially putting them on a fast-track deportation. Late last week at a Lancaster summit in London, British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer said that a small group of European nations would work with President Zelensky on a ceasefire proposal and then present it to the United States. The UK is fully conscious of the necessity of working very hard and also conscious of the fact that the heavy lifting should be done by Europe, and it is incumbent upon Britain to play a leading role, if necessary, and together with others, to ensure that boots on the ground and planes in the air could give Ukraine a sense of necessary security. And today I'm delighted to be joined by my guests, Michael Hack, joining us from Berlin, Germany, and Mr. Ali Kasman, joining from Chicago. Welcome to both of you, gentlemen.
Thank you for having me.
My first question is going to be addressed to Mr. Hack. So the overall picture for Ukraine and for the continent in general does not look very nice. It looks pretty gloomy. And Germany, for all of its economic strength and might, which seems to be in decline now, does not appear to be top consequential actor within this process. What is your evaluation of the current process? And we have this UK-led coalition of the willing. We could also refer to it as an Anglo-French coalition. Where does Germany stand in this process?
Yes, Germany, again, in its history, wants to find its role. And with the new government, what we will have in place, we will have another kind of leadership coming up from Germany. I'm quite confident about that. You see that a lot goes now hand in hand. The announcement from Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission President, about this 800 billion euros defense package, this ReArm EU program, you see that this is already reflected in the current budget discussions, what we have here in the coalition talks currently in Berlin within the Conservatives and the Social Democrats. So you see everything goes there a bit hand in hand, and Germany will try to find here a role. It's not easy for Germany due to its history to become here a real leader. What is more surprising is that the UK apparently doesn't believe that much in this transatlantic brotherhood anymore, and reinstalls itself as a kind of a leader in Europe after the Brexit. This is a kind of a funny curve in history which the UK has taken now. But from all these kind of observations apart, we are in a very critical situation, and you see that reflected in the fear of the European partners in NATO that the US weapons which they are using fail, and this is something very, very serious. In the current defense systems, for example, this F-35 fighter jets play a crucial role. It's all interconnected, so these jets fly over the ground, scan everything, and it's going into a cloud, and it's connected here with the troops down, with the artillery down, with everything. So it's all interconnected. If there's the danger that these American weapons, like such key weapons like the F-35 fighter jets, are now in danger to be disarmed, this has serious consequences. And you see how states already react. This is now non-EU, but Switzerland already discusses its orders for the F-35s due to these new circumstances, and we will see how that now turns out.
Yes, indeed. Mr. Kastman, we have had quite a few emergency summits over the past few weeks, actually. The one was in London, and then we are having one today in Brussels. So what is next, really? Because what we understand, summits may take place, but things should happen very, very, very quickly indeed. And the circumstance on the battlefield presently, for all the Russian losses, and they have had casualties, massive casualties over the past few months, we know that, but Ukraine is not winning on the battlefield. What is next?
Well, first, it's hard to say what's going to be next because of uncertainty of the political situation. I still believe Ukraine is in a position to defend itself. It's a matter of having the right resources. Even the best driver in the world can go even a mile if the tank is empty. Ukrainians need those intelligence sharing to be reinstated. They need additional weapons, and the United States is definitely in a position to provide that resource. It's very unfortunate that President Trump is now playing appeasement politics and is pressing on Ukraine instead of Russia to negotiation tables.
Mr. Kastman, terribly sorry for disrupting you, of course. What should Ukraine do in order for that military aid that Ukraine used to get to be resumed, you think? Would the minerals still be sufficiently good enough? Because as I understand, both intelligence sharing and also suspension of military aid are extremely important for Ukraine and for its effort on the battlefield.
Right. Well, obviously what has happened last Friday was a diplomatic fiasco. Zelensky and Trump and Vance, all of them have made mistakes. Of course, Ukraine is on the receiving end at the moment. And Zelensky, there's information that he possibly acted on the bad advice. One way or another, he weakened his position. So right now, Trump, perhaps he doesn't believe that Zelensky is acting in a good faith, and that's why he's pressuring him by, in this case, restricting intelligence sharing. Now, at this point in time, Zelensky needs to show willingness to negotiate. I hope that by the time he gets to that table and it talks about actual concessions with Putin, he's going to be firm at that point in time. But he should at least show willingness to get to that point where negotiations can take place. At least this is the intention of President Trump. I personally believe he's wrong. He doesn't understand Russia. He doesn't understand the nature of this war. But for Trump to realize he needs a different strategy, Zelensky first has to get him to that negotiating table and let Trump realize that this is Putin who is a problem, that this is Putin who is not going to negotiate in a good faith.
Mr. Hack, I suppose it would be fair to say that militarily and financially, Europe, if one takes all the European countries together, is more than capable of winning a war against Russia. I think it's very clear to everybody. In fact, we have heard very similar line, almost the self-same line from Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk today. But the question that many people are asking is, if this whole war, battle, confrontation, from the European perspective, has been primarily about helping Ukraine outright, or actually weakening Russia to the extent of making it to acquiesce with Kiev's terms and relinquish its positions on the battleground. So the fundamental question many people are asking is, would it be fair to say that at the expense of Ukrainian casualties, Europeans have so far been engaged in the policy of weakening Russia? So what is your reflection on this particular moment?
I absolutely agree with that statement.
I think you're
perhaps they are dragging their feet. The truth of the matter is Europe is not in a position to defend itself. It is trying desperately to increase its defense capabilities, but Europe needs time. And in order for Europe to be able to stand against an aggressor like Russia, they need to make difficult decisions, meaning cut down on their social programs, cut down on expenses that are not necessary. Unfortunately, that also means that people need to live slightly less comfortably than they used to, and politicians are not willing to make those choices because they're thinking about their re-elections chances. And until everyone in Europe realizes that the time has come to take Russian threat seriously, they will not be in a position to defend itself. And as we can see, the United States is taking a position that Europe needs to be responsible for its own security. I personally, as an American, I really hope that if push comes to shove and there's another military war conflict in Europe, United States is going to step in. Meanwhile, this is a fair position that Europe needs to act on its own defenses. And finally, Europe is in this vicious cycle where it continues to do business with Russia, feeding it money that later Russia converts into weapons that in return threatens Europe. And Ukraine is Europe, as we know.
Mr. Hack, it's the self-same question to you, Mr. Hack.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I agree with you. Possibly the Europeans could, from the material side, win such a war. That's possible. Possibly not. I'm not sure. The thing is the willingness, and that's what the colleague already said. I am not sure how the majority of the European population sees that. Now, here in Germany, we are quite close to this conflict. So even here, I am not sure how the rating of a hot war against Russia is perceived. There were several points raised here. I am not sure if the population in Europe, considering the economic situation we are in, the uncertainty we are in, the sufferings that we had post-COVID, energy prices, etc., is willing to take here any kind of wealth decrease due to a war, which is now officially called a proxy war between Russia and the US. So when the US is stepping out of that, I think we are now seeing a real, let's say, a confident Europe who wants to present its own strength when it comes to its defense abilities. That's why these programs are taking up. But currently, there is not a lot. And what Trump did is to take really this cloth off the menu and showed how weak Europe is in the defense sector. And I think that's a shock here. And we will respond to that. But I am currently not convinced that we could, here as Europeans, win such a war with Russia. Neither, I think, this is wished by the population. I think what we see now currently are these debates about a ceasefire, even from Zelensky, who now starts these negotiations. And I think that's the first step when we can, where we see then a path towards a peace treaty, and some negotiations around that. And I think what we are witnessing right now are, if I may call it like that, some face-saving exercises that the European leaders are not looking as weak as Trump made them look right now.
Mr. Kassmann, Zelensky publicly said that he agrees to work under the leadership of Donald Trump, but his envoy to the United Kingdom accused Trump of destroying the world order by making some undue concessions to Russia. Is Zelensky, I know you're based in the United States, but you have some contacts in Ukraine, in your motherland. Is Zelensky still in charge of the country and his government? Because I imagine that there are those in Ukraine who would believe that Ukraine should carry on this battle, and the plan proposed by the United States is too concessional. It's not within the best interest of Ukraine. It could give rise to some permanent consequences. Therefore, this path that the Ukraine is going to go, is it unanimously accepted within the government circles as the only way forward, bearing in mind the current difficult circumstances?
I believe if Ukrainians could conduct a fair and safe elections, at this point in time, they would certainly do so. And I'm not convinced at all that Zelensky has good chances to be reelected. Ukrainians also understand that the situation as it is very challenging, and if they attempt to remove Zelensky through non-democratic means or by asking him to resign, other forms of change in the government, that's going to cause a lot of disturbance and may weaken Ukraine further. So again, I don't think Zelensky has good chances to be reelected as it is, given fair and safe elections. However, the situation is what it is, and Ukrainians are rather keep it as it is for now.
I see. Mr. Haig, it has been said that any challenge, however gargantuan that challenge may be, it is also, in a way, potentially a blessing in disguise. So it is now time for European countries to understand that they have to take some measures to be able to protect themselves without the United States against any external threat. And recently, there was a piece of information circulating in the media that this new administration's shift away from Ukraine has provided a boost to European markets. And that there was an article about Make America Great Again appears to morphing into Make Europe Great Again. And the argument there being made that due to certain defense spending rise, it's possible that we will see some increase in the European economies and so forth. So to what extent European countries are conscious of the fact that this was, in many ways, I mean, I'm talking about the decision-making process at the very top of European institutions. This threat that Europe is presently facing was, in many ways, inevitable, and the decisions that are going to be taken now, they are bound to be part of the European future anyway, with or without Ukraine.
Yes, absolutely. I think you raised some really good points in your questions. The thing is that we need to look at this challenge as the challenge as it is. And this can be a positive outcome of all of that, that Europe was shown by an external partner and by the US what we have to do and where deficits are in our cooperation in Europe. So I think that's a good signal. The other thing is what you also completely said right, is that our economy now, I think I'm optimistic that if we are cutting the right red tape, if we are going for company taxes, other tax reforms, I think we can secure here our social Europe, our social society, but also boost again our economy. I mean, here in Germany, we are still the third largest economy in the world, and we have a good infrastructure for research. We have world-leading products in many cases. We have a world-leading chemical industry as well, which is just suffering right now from the energy prices and from other declines in the global market, but it's strong, it's resilient. And I think we can go back there to track. So we can be thankful that maybe that's a shock, which we just have to digest and where we have to come to the right conclusions out of that. For the Ukraine and for these relations also with Russia, I think we need to have here real peace talks, because the suffering and the death in the Ukraine, it's unbearable, and it's personally a catastrophe for all involved. So all my sympathies with this. As Europe, we have to find a plan and a way forward how to end that. With our own industry and the whole defense sector, you're also completely right when you said that that this could be a real boost. I mean, just look at Rheinmetall. Rheinmetall goes from one record to the next one. So you see that this impact from Trump's policy boosts particularly the defense sector in Europe, but also the others. So I think, yeah, like you rightly said, and I'm also personally an optimistic person, I think it's a shock. I think we get over it. I think we will get this all now leads to a path to peace, and we will see most likely a stronger Europe at the end of the day. Even, if I may add that at the end, even when I look at Orban and his speech now in Brussels after the meeting, when even he agrees that we have to have more defense spending. So he's not blocking Ursula von der Leyen's plan. So even Hungary is agreeing to such a reboost of the defense abilities in Europe, which could lead then to a stronger Europe, despite that somebody like Orban will never want a real united or a super state Europe. But nevertheless, we are on a good path there, and the necessity is seen for cooperation here in Europe, and I'm quite confident about that.
Thank you very much indeed to both of you. Thank you very much indeed for your time. This was Michael Hack, political analyst from Berlin, Germany, and Ali Kasman, Protect Ukraine Now organization, who joined from Chicago, United States. We discussed the latest string of summits on Ukraine in different parts of Europe, European rearmament plan, and the prospects of a ceasefire in Ukraine with some fateful consequences to follow. See you very soon.